As Renato watched Lupino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lupino? That was a recipe for disaster. There were stickers all over the platform for really hot lady foxes, with pictures and addresses and everything. Hoped his hook didn't break. Renato, smash! Yeah! Bernardo felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age. Bernardo had given up in the Skyripper's armature to save his friend Lupino. But without its armature, Skyripper's core was a deadly poison. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. Energy cannons, the last argument of kings. Bernardo was dead tired. Then he was just dead. Slippy's hit, he thought. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. What was his name again? The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Bernardo found the mad rabbit cowering under a desk. "The ravens. They must have known we were coming," said Lupino. "How did you..." "Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom! I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base." The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. The core was killing him. He needed help. The sage, Calaveras, had given him the maps to find the armature and the core. If anyone knew the true name of the Transcendent Emperor, if anyone knew how to assemble the Sky Ripper, Calaveras did. If anyone could heal Reynardo and render the core safe, at least to its bearer, surely it was he. The base of the mountain was the only safe place for a landing. He would have to continue on foot, muscles aching. Calaveras was a scholar, not a doctor. Could he really save Reynardo from the poison radiating from the lost god's eye he was so recklessly carrying? This was not a fun way to die. Even if he survived, no one would write ballads about the fox whose knees ached forever, would they? Not unless he paid for it. And he hated paying for publicity. Good thing Reynardo didn't have vertigo. It was chilling walking through the living mountains. There was always noise up ahead. Insects, birds, the croak and flutter of ravens arranging ambushes. But close by, there was only the breeze and the trickle of melting snow, as if every living thing was holding its breath for his poisonous burden to move on. to be something useful in these things, didn't there?
To traitors!
Caught the ravens. Bernardo felt a little better. Sometimes, at home, he'd wave his sword around for hours. Bernardo wasn't sure he should have rescued Lapino. He could have had the Sky River. Now all he had was the core, and it was killing him.
The core, splendid, croaked Calaveras. Where's the armature?
Right, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't need it.
No, I don't. It's just a professional interest. We've got much better prismatics than the old TE ever did.
So Calaveras was an arcane engineer. He fussed at the core all day. He wrapped it with silver chains, and in front of it, he placed a huge round ruby so that it looked like a monstrous floating eye. Ah, so, what is it?
Yeah, I call it the Oculum. It's my very first death ray.
And it won't poison me?
Oh, no, it's completely safe now.
Anything I should watch out for?
Yeah, try to avoid pointing at any mirrors.
As he loaded the Oculum onto the Farfarer, Bernardo was a little concerned about Calaveras. People who were utterly sure of themselves, he had found, were either experts or horribly wrong. Or both. But Bernardo only needed to fire the Oculum once. He only needed to destroy one ship, the Emperor's ship, and the war was over. Bernardo plunged into the Imperial fleet. He felt the Oculum humming. He no longer felt sick. This was going to be fun. Or at least, it was going to be over. Bernardo resisted the temptation to fire the Oculum until the time came. He could sense its arcane energies yearning to escape the sage's wrappings. But it wasn't eating him alive. So that was a plus. He felt good about himself. He'd saved a friend, he'd helped the rebels, he'd relied on himself, but he'd listened to others. He felt like the right sort of hero. Wise, yet decisive. Calaveras had been so sure it would work. Maybe he could fire it just a few times. No harm in that, right? But only when he absolutely needed to. What's there? Truth was, Bernardo really liked the sound his sword made in the air.
Renado's arm was getting tired. The core was no longer eating at him, but he still felt weak. His stamina was shot. But he had the oculum. When the ravens swarmed him, it would sometimes fire its death ray. It seemed to be warming up, too, firing more and more often. Maybe we should let it cool off. He decided to stop using it entirely.
Once again, Renado was dead right. Or actually just dead.
Once, he found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he broke it. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. This would be the perfect place for a tic-tac-toe war.
Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Renado.
oculum was still hot to the touch. He almost thought it was getting even hotter. And that was ridiculous, of course. Anyway, he'd only to fire it one more time, and then he could chuck the whole contraption into the abyss, and the Emperor's ship was now in range. Bernardo squinted. He could make out the line of ravens protecting the ship. Zenobia in front, conjuring. And on the deck, yes, that was His Imperial Majesty, pacing in his golden armor. Bernardo lined up his shot and fired. Caught in the beam, the ship burst into flames. The ravens and Zenobia exploded. The Emperor, too, exploded. Bernardo waited for the beam to stop, but it only got brighter, and the oculum hotter. Frantic, Bernardo pulled the oculum towards the abyss. The ruby burst into flames. The shiny metal casing glowed, then melted. That was good. Now the core could cool off, right? Bernardo ran. The blast incinerated him instantly, along with both fleets. The shockwave could be felt across all Erda. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness. And, just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, and he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Bernardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game-changer, but could Bernardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Bernardo wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Bernardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Bernardo could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens.
He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper?
Reynardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Reynardo felt a little bad stealing crafting materials from chests. He preferred to rob them from people at sword point. Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling. Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare? Snapped Reynardo, a little smug.
That had been his mistake before, thinking he could win a battle of wills with an ancient evil all by himself. He had to be cleverer than that. Or braver. Or something. I wonder what happens if I go that way. Blood on this one, so it hadn't saved its owner. Two eyes, good. One eye, dead. Teach you how to fly. They had to bury him in a bucket. Actually, several buckets. You shall not pass!
goat. Take the goat across first, Bernardo thought. But it was too late. One small step for a fox, he thought. Bye-bye, life, he thought. Hello, emptiness. I should go, he thought. What else could you hook? Touché, he said, and died. No one could beat Bernardo at hot potato. Open, says me.
See? That wasn't so hard. There it was. Sky Ripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good, no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core. Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense? There were rumors of talking apes deep in the forest, but everyone knew apes couldn't talk. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato. This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes. He said to no one in particular as he died. God, it's full of stars. Sometimes, Renata really hated inanimate objects. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. These had to be imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. They really needed to construct additional pylons. There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
Okay, let's get this over with, and we can all go home. Well, not you, just me. Once, Renato had been to a dungeon where all the chests were locked. It was awful.
If you can't stand the heat, he thought, stay out of the flamethrower. Well, he'd always wanted to do that. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark art, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of superweapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Well, of course. If you've just assembled a weapon out of legend that can exile gods from the world, you'd want to have a scientist or two look at it. And even if they disagreed and he had time, he could ask Calaveras himself. Yes, the observatory would be his objective. Why had the parts of the Sky Ripper only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had dismantled it? The mad Emperor Isengrim had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Was that why these ancient artifacts were rising out of the ground? How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction. And, hopefully this time, just his
destruction. Bernardo wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. Had that door been opened before? Everything hurt. And then it didn't. To everything, there is a season. He turned over and died. We'll always have Paris, he thought. And then he died.
Renato had once invested in a jewel store, but it lost money because someone kept robbing it. Twist. It was him. A legendary weapon was exactly what the rebellion needed. They were outnumbered. The once kind emperor had become a tyrant. But his ravens stayed loyal, for he fed them his victims, and the other animals were too frightened to rebel. Renato shuddered at what the emperor was trying to do. To bring back the lost gods, the Black Harvest, the Black Sun? No. He would stop that toad, no matter what the risk. Renato's path was clear. Let the scientists ensure the Sky Ripper was safe to use, bring it to the rebel base, and then assault the Imperial fleet for the win. Renato wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform? Landed a claw on him. Renato was thrilled. The scientists seemed to think he'd put the Sky Ripper together right. But one Toad was worried.
Yeah, the Sky Ripper could tear a hole in existence itself. There are invisible strings that tie the universe together. If the Sky Ripper cut one, the hole would widen and widen until our whole existence fell into it.
Another Toad sighed.
Irving still believes in string theory. At least go see Calaveras.
Yeah, said the worried Toad.
He knows more than anyone else has forgotten about the Transcendent Emperor.
If anyone could tell him how to use this weapon safely, it would be Calaveras. It was he who had told Renato how to find it in the first place. But maybe he had to give up on using it as a weapon. Maybe he had to go to the secret rebel base and ask the generals there what he could do with a weapon that he dared not use. One way or another, there had to be a safe way to use it. Well, he should have known he'd have to consult Calaveras again. The scientists at the observatory were smart enough. But what did they know of the Transcendent Emperor? He hoped it wouldn't delay him too long. The rebels had scheduled the final battle soon. Every day they delayed risked the exposure of the secret base. And some soldiers were already drifting back to their homes and families. Calaveras would fix the Sky Ripper for him. And then he would win the final battle. Maybe it was the cold. But after a few steps, Renato's optimism started to slump. What if Calaveras couldn't help? Did Renato dare use the Sky Ripper? Oh, he hated that he had chosen this path. It was so much simpler to rescue friends and attack enemies. Even if some of those friends were more trouble than his enemies, some of those enemies had been friends before and might be lovers after. No, okay, it wasn't all that much simpler, no. Physics made his brain hurt. That, at least, he was sure of.
No. Hey. Goodbye.
Yours, said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer.
Fox, they're waiting.
tried to focus on the now. The ravens who seemed everywhere all the time, where did they hatch from? Were there giant raven hatcheries somewhere, or did they have families? Ooh, he didn't want to think about raven mummies raising their darling raven chicks. Yeah, Calvaris would help. He would make Renato feel better about using the Sky Ripper, and then Renato wouldn't have to worry about ravens ever again.
Couldn't they have put in an elevator? Or a giant eagle? Or something? Is a very cool sword, thought Renato. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did. So this was what it was like to die. Not nearly as much fun as they said. This chest was really horrible. Get it? This is quite the view, he thought.
Renato had been focusing all his energies on the Sky Ripper. Calaveras could not fix it. He'd be out of options. He would have to assault the Imperial fleet empty-handed. Calaveras had never let him down.
Yeah, of course I can make it work better.
But when Renato explained about the strings, Calaveras grew thoughtful.
Oh, strings, you say? Well, the Arcana do speak of the ties that bind the world.
He drew many intricate symbols in the dirt.
Yeah, so, according to my calculations, each time you fire, I'm afraid there's a 1 in 120 chance you'll destroy the universe.
That's pretty good odds. That's like rolling, 21 dice and they all come up 6. What are the odds of that?
What? No! It's more like 2.71 sixes in a row.
Anyway, with those odds, it won't happen if I use it just once, Renato said. Although he wasn't sure that was entirely right.
Yeah, no, that's not right. Each time you use it... Okay, look, just don't use it ever.
All right, I guess. As he sailed towards the fleet, Renato could see the dropships of the rebels coming out of the clouds. This was it. The big battle. They could not afford to lose this one. What if it didn't go well? What if he had to use the Sky Ripper? Could he risk the entire universe in the throw of a dice? On the other hand, what were the odds of rolling 21? Or was it 2.71? 6s in a row. He had a feeling they were surprisingly good. That is, bad. Anyway, the odds were big. His brain was hurting again. The battle was not going spectacularly well. What had the rebels been thinking? They'd been thinking he would bring the Sky Ripper, or the Iblis Stone, or that he'd sideline Zenobia somehow, or turn her. Couldn't he use the Sky Ripper just once? After all, if chances were 1 in 128, that meant he'd for sure be okay the first time. They'd get worse each time he used it, but the first time would be okay, right? He wasn't sure that it was right. So he didn't fire the Sky Ripper. He just brought it along, in case. What's behind door number 2? Someone had told him the odds didn't change just because you'd had a streak of good luck. His gut told him that was wrong, though. And he always listened to his gut. On the other hand, 128 chances to win. But one of them would destroy the universe. Ooh, that seemed a bit serious. Maybe he could defeat the Emperor without firing the Sky Ripper. Maybe he could bluff, but with a real weapon. Like in Cars, and you had 3 nades, but you pretended you had a fizz-bin. Well, that could work.
A very clever engineer named Elon Musk got to start making floating platforms. Not many people knew that.
He set up the Sky Ripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. You won't actually use that, she said in that annoying, I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox voice she had. Oh, I know the odds. Good. Because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe. No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low. What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times. No, but That's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class? Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once, he said. Don't. He felt sure the odds were with him. He had to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. Fire, he said. Please? The Skyripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. And then he noticed there was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger, and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Fernando, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.